Evening, it's here. We're going to talk about why do you even have IEP goals? I mean, why is that there? I just want to know his levels and the services. Like, what's the point of the IEP goal? I mean, they just show it to us at the meeting and they ask us if we agree. And of course, we say, because that's what adults do in a situation when they don't know the answer. They just say, So let's kind of tease that out. What is the IEP goal? How do you write IEP goals? How do you collaboratively write them? What are the components? And then we're going to add on tonight goals and objectives. We're going to train all week on IEP goals. They're so unbelievably important. Thanks, you guys, for sending me all of those messages. Keep them coming. I want to know what you want to be trained on, because the better you are able to serve your student with disabilities coming alongside the educational setting, the more gains he's going to make. So I always say the IEP document is not just for the school to implement. We want to be doing that at church and at the family reunion and at home and with the tutor, so that we're all doing the same thing functionally, behaviorally, and academically. So welcome. If we haven't met, I'm Karen Mayer Cunningham, special education boss, helping families with children with disabilities get the services they need, navigate and negotiate the 504 process, the IEP process for kiddos between the ages of 3 and 22. And one thing you'll never get back is time. You'll never get back time. So if in fact your kiddo needs services through a 504 plan or special education, please get them, get help, get collaboration from another mom or other people that are in the special ed space, so that your kiddo can get the supports that they need. The quicker we intervene, the quicker we do interventions to close those gaps, the quicker the success will come. So we're talking about IEP goals. It's so unbelievably important. It's really the meat of the whole IEP document. A lot of times people will say, what is your IEP? And they're actually referring to the goal. But the IEP stands for what, you guys? Anybody remember? Individualized education plan, right? Or as I would say, I expect progress. And so progress means what? It means we're headed somewhere. And it's really important to know where you're headed. And the goals, the IEP goals, tell you what you're looking to measure, what the expectation is, rate of progress, and how we're going to get there. So IEPs are unbelievably important. And we went over them last night, kind of the beginning framework component of how to write a Smart Iep. And of course, this is taken from the great Pete Wright. Lots of people train on Smart Ieps. I don't think anybody trains better than him. There's a great section in From Emotions to Advocacy that Pete Wright wrote, and then Pat Howey does an amazing presentation on. And chapter 12 talks about Smart Ieps. And SMART is a framework, an acronym that you would use to write SMART goals for any area, but so vehemently important for kiddos. So let's go over those again. So the S stands for specific. I want to make it as specific as possible so that we are all doing the same thing. Specific, 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 right? Number 2, measurable. What am I measuring? Probably this is the biggest error that I see in draft IEPs handed to parents at meetings. Here is your draft IEP. It does mean that. And I'll say in a meeting, you can ask anybody that knows and loves me, and everybody that knows me loves me. I'll read the goal and I'll say, why? Why? Why does he need to know the writer's intent? Why does he need to know that, right? I need to know, what are we measuring? If you have, he will do this 5 out of 4 trials while holding this, while sitting at his desk with 2 verbal prompts, everything that you add to it adds a different criteria. So if there's so many things that you're measuring in a goal, said student might miss that goal because he didn't do one of the 3 components. So I like people to tighten it up. And this is what I say to the committee. Tell me what his biggest deficit is. What's the most critical area of need that we need to measure? A, action words. Will. It's not an action word. He will. Billy Smith. He will. He just will. So while that's part of it, he will as evidenced by, right? So if I said Karen will lose 50 pounds during COVID, or Karen put the 19 COVID-19 from sitting at a desk, right? So if I will lose 50 pounds in a year, that's what you want, right? A lot of times a goal is just what you want. And if you tease it out, sometimes it's just the state standards, right? We do standard-based IEPs. What does that mean? What is the standard for Utah? What's the standard for Texas? What's the standard for Alabama? I hope they're pretty much the same. Ours includes hairspray. I don't know where you guys live. And so what is the standard, right? You want it to be specific, measurable, the action words. How are we getting him closer to the standard? Because the implication legally is if you have an IEP goal, he's not at the standard, right? So what are we measuring? Is it specific enough based on this student, not based on the content? Don't really care about plateaus and mountains, right? I care about, is it tied to his disability? Is it something that we need to measure using action words? Number 4R, is it realistic and relevant? Is it relevant? Is it important that I know the state bird? I don't think it is. Now that I'm thinking, what is the state bird? I know the flowers, the bluebonnet. Somebody tell me the state bird. I don't know. Is that something that happens in your life? Have you been talking about the state bird a lot? I don't know. If he's going to go into being a bird person, that might be relevant. So if all the standards that you have in that content area, right? English, language arts, math, science, and social studies, this was what you want to measure for a year? And that's what you have to ask yourself. And a lot of times I'll have a teacher go, it is one of the TEKS, the Texas Education Knowledge. Like, I get it, but there's probably 1,000 of them, right? So we want the one that's most important to them and time limited, right? So if a kiddo is 10 years old and they read on a second grade level, so let's say 10-year-olds now done it. I've gone from age to grades. So let's say a fifth grader, really good, reads on a second grade level. And we're writing a fifth grade goal, and we want Billy to move up in reading in 36 instructional weeks. How much is he going to move up? If it took him 10 years to get to, hey girls, if it took him 10 years to get to second grade, is he going to move up 2 grades in a year? Probably not. Is he going to move up a grade in a year? No, because that unlikely. That would be the expectation. Maybe if he's just getting into special ed, maybe if he's just now getting interventions in reading, maybe if he's now getting baptized in dyslexia. But it's unlikely that a child's going to increase that. I had a kiddo the other day, not saying it wasn't true, didn't say that. However, he was reading on a 4th grade level. I'm sorry, I apologize. He was doing math on a 4th grade level in September, and they put him in a co-teach class, which is fantastic. Co-teach, right? There's a certified teacher of record, and then there's a special ed certified teacher at the back of the room. Who doesn't love that? And from September to December, he went up 4 grade levels. I don't think so, right? So it's what you're getting reported back true. I don't know. And here's one way that I'm the queen of data, right? We program, we measure based on one thing, data. So especially for reading, one of the things, or writing, I have my parents do, if they're sort of in question whether or not said kiddo needs an intervention, at school he reads this, at home he doesn't read this, is we just do a video that we turn into Steven Spielberg, right? So you've had your bath, you're happy, your tummy's full, you've eaten. Why don't you just pick up a leveled book, right? Talking about elementary school. Give him that leveled book, or give him the leveled book that your teacher said he can read at. Your librarian can give you that. Just do a 3-minute video. A book that the school says is at his level that he hasn't read yet. And then there is the truth. And so when I play the 180-second video in an IEP meeting, sort of stops the talking, right? So that at that meeting, we can see him read. We can see him struggle. Is it fluency? Is it rate? Is it breaking down the words? Is it answering questions at the end? Sometimes kiddos are great readers. They can't answer a single question about what they read. So what are those pieces in that reading product that are the deficit? Okay, so Smart IEP, specific, measurable, use action words, right? The action word ties the content to where you're headed and the expectation. And then as evidenced by, what's the evidence? What am I going to be able to pick up and see? Oh, Billy Smith, he does know about plateaus, right? I do love plateaus. Action words, realistic and relevant and time limited. Specific, measurable action words, realistic and time limited, because they have to be limited. We're not going to just work on it forever. I can't stand when I am in an IEP meeting, they go, oh, well, you know, Billy didn't master his goal from next year, so we're going to continue it. We're not. If he didn't master his goal, that's what? That's data. We have to look at it appropriately. So was the intervention inappropriate? Was the remediation inappropriate? Is he in the wrong setting? Is he too distracted in a setting? Are there too many kiddos? We don't just continue it. We look at the criteria again, and we repopulate an IEP in that content area, whether it's academic, functional, behavioral, or related or instructional service specific to his needs at present levels. We don't just stay here. I can't tell you how many times I've gotten somebody's paperwork and we've been working on the same thing forever. Okay? So we're not working on the same thing forever. We're getting it done, we're getting the intervention, and we're moving on. So IDEA 2004 says, in general, a child's present levels of academic achievement and functional performance include how you write an IEP, right? And that statement must include a statement of measurable annual goals, including academic and functional goals designed to do what? This is in the federal code. What are the goals designed to do? They are designed to, They are designed to do what? To meet the child's need that resulted from the child's disability, to enable the child to be involved in and make progress in the general ed curriculum. So kind of going back to the PLAF, which we trained on last week. The PLAF, present levels of academic achievement and functional performance, basically, if it's written right, I won't read you the federal code. If it's written right, I can pick up somebody's PLAF and go, oh, go to the class, watch that content area and go, oh, that's Billy. Because it's going to tell me how his disability impacts him in a general ed setting, right? Yeah, they do continue those goals. And next, it meets the child's need that results from his disability, and it meets the child's other educational needs that result from the disability. Here's a description of that. They will be measured, and there'll be periodic progress reports, and then those will be insurance report cards, right? I heard something ridiculous the other day. I hear a lot of ridiculous things. I call it shenanigans. My pastor's happy when I use that word. It's just shenanigans. And I wasn't in the IEP meeting, but I have, of course, had my wonderful clients record. They were new clients. And the teacher said, the parent was asking, do we get report cards for said student in self-contained class? And she goes, no, we don't get report cards. I mean, just if they make progress on their IEPs. I don't think so, right? So they get report cards. The report card comes with the IEP progress report, and then you line those up, right? So if I was going to be at 80% in 36 instructional weeks, increasing his reading fluency as evidenced by increased grades on his reading passages, and it was going to be at 80% in 36 instructional weeks, then if we get to the first grading period and we're at 10 percentile, is the probability going to be over 3 more quarters that he's going to make it to 80? No. So we just let it just hang out there? We don't. We go back and we do an IEP what? We do an IEP amendment. We amend the goal because that percentage is saying, hey, we got the wrong criteria, we got the wrong product, we got the wrong intervention, we have the wrong accommodations. And that job is your job. I would love to tell you that every case manager in the world is holding up all your kiddos' IEPs and progress reports. They're not. Schools are overwhelmed and understaffed, and that responsibility, if you are my client, is on you. Why are IEP goals so critical? Why are they critical? Well, let's talk about that. They're critical because they identify special education needs related to the disability. Special education need related to the disability, not just how the other kids in the class are doing. I love when they go, well, you know what, Billy has an 83 and the other kids, they have a 77. I heard that the other day in an IEP meeting. In the IEP, in the PLAF, they put This child's in a self-contained class. This child had an 86 average. The other kids in the self-contained class had a 77. Not appropriate. We don't put information about other children with disabilities in a child's IEP plat. Now, we could put the fourth grade expectation, but we don't say, hey, these kids are disabled and your kid's not as disabled. We don't do that, right? The school-based members decide what the goals are. So let me just see by show of hands, you guys can give me a thumbs up. How many of you guys have been invited with the school, invited to the meeting where they write IEP goals? How many of you know who writes your IEP goals? They just come from IEP heaven? Because I got the speech lady sending some over. Adaptive PA. Hey, did you want OT? We're not really a goal. We're going to attach to this. So where do the goals come from? How do they get on a piece of paper? So a lot of times I will have a case manager, and there's no malice in this. A case manager populates the IEP goals. Based on what? Based on contact with a teacher. So you want to tease that out, right? What was your contact with the teacher? I sent them an email and they answered some questions. No. I need the person delivering the product, the direct instruction, the special education instruction, to write the IEP goals. I don't need a case manager who may have never taught my child to make up a goal, to populate a goal based on an email with some questions. And so we need to know the whole thing. We need to know the good news, the bad news, all of it, so that we can write appropriate goals. And so we write those goals based on data, not feelings. And here's a list of, wait, don't get me started. What if I got all of you started? Wouldn't that be great? We could just call it an IEP. Let's get this started Facebook page. What goals may be created in the following areas? Listen, when I hear, hey, Natalie, when I hear we can't write a goal in that, baloney sauce. Not true. If we decide as an ARG committee that we're going to write a goal for Billy Smith to wear purple socks on Thursdays, then we can write that goal. But we're not allowed to write a goal in that area. Really, I've never met the you can't write a goal police. I don't know where they are. They're probably being quarantined from COVID. So if it doesn't pass the sniff test, then it's probably not true. The school hates it when I bring in the DLAs as data. Yeah. How important would benchmarks be? Kind of important. I love that when my kiddos they're reading at grade level. And then I'll just go, in first grade, did not meet, did not meet, did not meet. Second grade, did not meet, did not meet, did not meet. Third grade, did not meet, did not meet. But when he's in your class, so I need to know the truth so that I can make decisions and partner with you to make decisions that are appropriate for a child with a disability. So here's some of the goal areas that you could have: academics, cognition, thinking, and behavioral functioning, physical functioning, transition, life-giving skills, social functioning, communication, emotional functioning, behavioral functioning, which is different than behavior functioning, assistive technology, organizational skills, and countless direct and related services, right? VI, AI, OI, O&M, like what are all the other related, counseling related services, psych services, just a litany. But and in your goal, I know you girls are all going to get out, girls and boys, you're going to all get out your IP, and at the bottom of your IP, right, we have the goal. We have some objectives and benchmarks. We'll get to that in a second. But under the very bottom, there's this word that says implementer. Do you know what that means? So legally, that means that person that's listed there, it doesn't have to be specific, it doesn't say Miss Cindy, that implementer, special ed, general ed, when it says staff, I always say stuff like this because I'm lovely in a meeting. So I said staff, so is that like the cafeteria lady? Is that the registrar? What I don't know what that means. Your rod and your staff, right? So I want it to be specific. So special education teacher, general education teacher, occupational therapist. So the other day I was in an IEP meeting and I knew what the school was tracking. And they'd written these academic goals and it just said special ed, special ed, special ed. So you know what I call that? Predetermination. In this setting, and you'd have to know all the the parts of it. Why do you say that, Karen? Because only in a self-contained setting is it only special ed. Said students in general ed, then it would say general ed and special education teachers. So while you're at that meeting, I want you to say, who is responsible for Billy learning about plateaus? Anybody? 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 How often do you take data on IEP goals? Regularly. Regularly. That's a measurable word. What does that mean? Regularly. So I say, is it 12 times a day? Is it once a quarter? Is it 5 times on Thursdays? Give them some options so they can pick from. If I'm sitting in an IEP meeting and you don't know when you collect data, we're not going to agree to these goals. I don't just need a goal that you never collect data on. It needs to be clean data. Also, when you have kiddos that have neurological differences, autism, ADHD, emotional disturbance, I don't want to hear that you're being nice. And God bless teachers, they are nice. But I need you to take data clean. Oh, well, he was having a bad day that day, so we didn't take data on his behavior goal. No. We take data in a clean way. So we should know today that October 3rd, we take data on this goal. Not when you feel like it, when he's having a good day, when you think he's really got it. It needs to be clean and outlined. Okay? If there's an educational need related to your child's disability, that's all you have to remember. If there is an educational need, not academic need, I love when they throw that out there. The law doesn't say that. Is there an educational need, right? So there might be an educational need for dressing. There might be an educational need for toileting. There might be an educational need for feeding. There might be an educational need for, I don't know, not hitting your friend in the face in the lunch line, right? It doesn't have to all be math, science, social studies, reading, and language arts. An educational need. I have lots of kiddos that have an IEP and they don't have a single academic goal. They're ADDDDDD, and we have one goal: turn in your homework. That would be fantastic. They're so crucial because it should tell me it's a guesstimate, an assumption based on rate of progress of what your child should be able to do in an agreed period of time with these interventions. They exist solely for reasonable educational progress. That's progress, right? IEP, individualized education plan, or as I would say, I expect progress, right? And if this setting's not working, then we look at something else, and those are hard decisions to make. Oh, but I like Miss Cindy. Yeah, he's not reading any better with Miss Cindy. I know, but his brother is a twin, and they're in there together. Yeah, he can't read. And I help families have hard discussions because I take last year's data and this year's data. That's my job, and go, hey, last year you were at 110 pounds, Karen, like I am now, and you said you wanted to get to 100 pounds, and this year you're at 109. Okay, so obviously we had the wrong plan in place. Pragmatic goals. Should it only be the implementer? Should the only implementer be the SLP? That's a great question. So pragmatic goal, right? So that's one of that eligibilities that just sort of hovers out there. It's, I think, one of the most important eligibilities and areas of need for speech. Pragmatic language, that social appropriateness, right? If I come in, I'm the teacher, said kiddo has a speech impairment and a deficit in their disability in pragmatics, and I might be crying, and he says, why are you crying? Because I lost my cat. Well, did you know that the Lego conference came in this weekend, and they're coming out with new Legos? So that's not appropriate social language based on what is happening. So initially, Carla, absolutely, the SLP is the implementer, but there absolutely could be co-implementers if the kiddo is in a social setting, if those are roles that you can set up in an educational setting. So the implementer does one and or two things. All of the implementers implement the goal, which is a fancy word for saying deliver and work on. The second part of that, legally, an implementer collects data. So I want to see when I'm in the meeting, hey, who's collecting data on Nicholas's goals? Anybody? And if you can't answer me, that's the problem. Who's collecting data? I get all of this data, AT, OT, APE, who collected the data? And they look around. Not a fan of I want to know who's collecting the data and why, right? They are related. The goal is related what? to your students what need? Unique need. Every kiddo is cooked different, right? And based on the acuity of their disability, based on the comorbidity of your disability, based on age, based on neurological impact, everything, your kiddo's unique need. And at minimum, they are created annually and measured. In your IEP progress report, you get a populated document. Can I tell you how many times it says, continuing, he's making progress, he's making progress, he's making progress. I don't know what that means. I don't know what that means. If I don't know what that means, then I don't know what that means. I need to know, what is he making progress on? Is he making progress on the rate, the percentages, the promptings? You need to be more specific in that area. So let's talk about data collection and benchmarks. See, I marked myself holding the benchmark. Oh, here we go. Definition of annual benchmark and short-term goals. So it's different in every state. In our great state of Texas, our state sends out guidelines. You can get them from your special education agency, state education agency, or a local education agency. So the state has sent out guidelines to the school district saying, hey, about this is how we'd like you to implement it. So I call it a soft serve of the law, right? These are the guidelines. We're not asking you to pick up the code and read it. These are the guidelines helping you where you want to go. So the definition of an annual benchmark and short-term goals. So the annual goal is what he is to meet at the end of 36 instructional weeks, right? At the end of the IEP term. Benchmark and or short-term goals are unique. So in our state, there is no requirement for any goal other than an academic goal to have benchmarks and or short-term goals. However, I always gently, in my German-Irish way, ask for benchmarks. It's just easier to see. I mean, I get it that if in 36 weeks you're supposed to be at 70%, I don't know how to divide that, right? So the only math that I know is tall, grande, and venti. So I like benchmarks. So at 9 weeks, we're expecting him to do this. At 18 weeks, we're going to do this. We're going to fade this back. And I can see the progression and the rate of expectation for the student. So an annual goal is an overarching measurable goal in a content area that describes what this child should reasonably be able to accomplish within a full year, right? The benchmark goal is a goal that describes the amount of progress the child will make in specific parts of the year. Short-term goals are a smaller goal needed to accomplish both benchmark and annual goals. So the guidelines in Texas are, and it's kind of, I would say wonky, that's my favorite legal word, it's a little wonky, because whatever the law says and then the state says and then whatever said district interprets, is that there's to be a minimum of 2 benchmark and or short-term goals based on the annual goal and an academic deficit. So some people argue with me and say that's only a self-contained class. Okay, even if that's in a self-contained class, we would like, since we're stakeholders in this meeting, we would like benchmarks for this reading goal or for this math goal. It's just easier to read. I don't usually get a lot of pushback on that. Because when I get pushback, I push back. Because it's about the kiddo. It's not about me. It's not about the school. Okay? And finally, remember, most of all, these are really important components of the IEP. You've got to ask yourself this. You really do. What is the area of need? I mean, I can't tell you how many times I sit in a meeting and it's like, why does he have a math goal? Because math is going to be really hard next year. Nope, that doesn't meet the criteria for an IEP goal. Is it related to their disability? No, just it's really hard in science next year. I think it will help him. Does this address an area of need or impact? And why can't she do that now? Why is she 2 levels behind in this area? And a lot of times we have goals in reading and math, but we don't have any goals in science and social studies. So let's kind of talk about that for a minute. If you are 2 or 3 grades level behind in reading, I have a hard time believing that you're at grade level in social studies? Well, it's hands-on. It's still reading, right? You're 2 or 3 years behind in math. I have a hard time believing that you're at grade level science. Well, they passed the state testing. And here's the double-edged sword of the state testing. There are kiddos who have a medium to low average cognitive profile, and they do phenomenal on state testing. I have kiddos that have an IQ in the 130s and do terrible on state testing. So what is state testing? State testing is something that I practice all year long. We're rested. We have the whole day. It's in a quiet setting. It might be actually the optimum way the kiddo learns. But that's what? 1 point of data. I go back and I look at the FIE. I look at, when you told me that they passed the STAR test, well, their reading rate is in the 2 percentile. So we look at all of those data points, right? We take them together and we make goals with benchmarks and objectives to serve a student's unique difference based on their disability. So those are the things that I want you guys to remember because they're so unbelievably important. I want to go over a couple of questions that I've gotten. Happy Monday to you all, the COVID crew. I feel like somebody's gonna name their child Corona or COVID, or somebody probably already has. So got a great online questions. You guys keep sending me the online questions. I love them. And it was not shocking, but I always say I'm always shocked, but never surprised. So we've talked about how schools are wanting to have a contingency plan. I'm wanting you guys to get a notebook and start taking records from March 12th. How many school days did we have? I've had some questions about the school days. Are these school days? Look on your state's website because the days are defined very specifically. So in the beginning, they weren't school days, even though we were closed. They were called temporary closed. So look at the language. Are we closed with instruction? Because the state doesn't consider those temporary closed days as school days. Even if your school had sent you Schoolology or some, I don't know, Starfall, whatever the thing is, right? So you have to figure that out from your state. You can reach out to the to your state's special ed department. They would know that. So here's the question. Will you address this on your live videos? How can we handle teachers asking for parent data during COVID? Are teachers really, really pushing us for lengthy data charts that they want to use as a substitute for their data? So I'm just gonna read this to you because I'm a really good reader. Good afternoon. I've been working at getting activity for each one of your child's IEP goals and listing them on a document for your easy access. Isn't that nice? Please note that they are to be used in conjunction with the additional activities that I've already sent out to you, and many of you are using. Attached, you will find cards to print out to use for working on Billy Smith's reading goals. Wow. Print out the card, then she says this, print and cut the cards out and highlight the first letter of each word. Wow. Okay. In an effort to document how your son is doing on his goals, I've also created a separate form that will be sent out weekly entitled Weekly Parent Feedback. I know that y'all are all overwhelmed right now, and it isn't my goal to add to that, but I'd really appreciate you filling out this sheet each week and emailing me a picture of the completed form on Fridays. Don't stress about this, and don't worry if you can't or aren't getting to everything. Please just let me know what, if anything, is being worked for on each goal. Both of the above documentations are attached. Please reach out with any questions. Said teacher. So the form, I was surprised at the form. So it has the week, April 13th to April 17th. It has reading 2.1, reading 2.2, math 3.1, 3.2, science 5.1, science 5.2, social studies 6.1, social studies 6.2, behavior 8.1, behavior 8.2. There's the other page. Social skills communication 9.1, social skills communication 9.2, Self-help 13.1, self-help 13.2, vocational 16.1, vocational 16.2, gross motor 17.1, gross motor 17.2, fine motor 18.1, fine motor 18.2. Wait for it. Then there's an example, 3-5, 2 PPIV. What? So there's a legend. Is it full physical prompt, partial physical prompt, gesture, visual, verbal, independent? You're kidding, right? And that's just for 5 days a week. So that's just 20 goals that you need to work on 5 days a week. And then you take a picture of that and send that back in. Whoo! Just do the best that you can. I appreciate this, but last time I checked, unless you are your school's, your child's teacher, you're not an implementer on the IEP goal. Under implementer, did it say mama? Anybody? Nope. Mine don't either. Right? So there's two people, two parties in an IEP document: the student with a disability and a local education agency. That's it. We're in a unique time. I certainly want, as much as it's feasible, right? In the law, we're always looking at two things: meaningful benefit, harmful effect. I don't know if this lovely young lady has any other children. My goodness, 5 days a week, 20 goals. And she had a legend at the bottom. So no. I would say we worked on plateaus. You know, I love a plateau goal. And I read him a story about the Rocky Mountains. And he enjoyed the book. I am not trying to replicate school. Even if you are a teacher at another school, do the best that you can. Document what you were able to do. We never exacerbate the acuity of a child's disability by pressing in. And these kiddos are having enough struggles of their own. We have so many of my kiddos, my family sent me a picture that their kid just gets stressed and stands at the door. They don't understand, because here's what we told them, right? We told them what? We're going back at the end of March. Nope, we're going back April 13th. Hold on. We're definitely going back May 1st. Now we're not going back. And most kiddos, whether they have a difference or not, don't have the bandwidth to understand that. I don't have the bandwidth to understand that. So compassion, kindness, care, and wash your hands. That's our first focus. Capture what you've done. Remember what I said, capture the data from the teachers. Go to that signature page. If he has 4 service providers, 2 switch teachers, 2 co-teachers, list their names out and say, Miss Smith never called me. Miss Johnson cannot stop calling, right? I want you to capture that, so that if in fact your child has a need, that we might consider calling an IEP meeting when we return back to brick and mortar for consideration of compensatory time. So we're going to keep training on IEPs all this week. Did you guys have any more questions for me? Thank you guys, you're so nice. Thank you. Oh, you know how I look this good? Concealer, lots and lots of concealer. So keep sending in your questions. If you have a question, you can drop it in the queue. Or some people don't want their question in the queue. You can just shoot me an email at Karen@specialeducationboss.com. Remember, we're doing this for one reason, successful student outcomes. And remember, I've always said, if we get it right for the child, we get it right for everybody. And that's what we want to get it right for everybody. So keep loving those kiddos, keep collecting the data that you can, keep your hands washed, right? And we will see you in the next video. We're going to be here every night from Sunday through Thursday, as long as there is a COVID need. We're happy to answer your questions. Our job is to equip people so that they can serve their kiddos successfully. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you in the next video.